Hi guys, there are two things that are consistent about Boris Johnson, and they are that he's an attention seeker and a liar. Now, as world leaders are attending the COP27 meeting to deal with climate change, to push for richer countries to help out developing nations and emerging economies, Boris Johnson came out of obscurity to give his take. Ironically, what the former Prime Minister says here, I actually agree with. The problem is that Boris Johnson hasn't always agreed with Boris Johnson. Have a listen.
They have led some of the naysayers to adopt a corrosive cynicism about net zero, and people have started to say, oh, we all went too far and too fast, and that we've been naive and utopian in our rush to move beyond hydrocarbons, that we've inflicted needless energy costs on our populations. And people have drawn the conclusion, some people, right, not in this room, I'm exempting all of you from this charge, but there are people who've drawn the conclusion that the whole project of net zero needs to be delayed, mothballed, and put on ice. And, for instance, we need to reopen coal-fired power stations and frack the hell out of the British countryside. And so I believe that here at Sharm is a moment when we really have to tackle this nonsense head on. And yes, of course, we do need to use hydrocarbons in the transitional period. That's obvious. And yes, in the UK, there is more that we can do with our own domestic resources. This is not, however, the moment to abandon the campaign for net zero. This is not the moment to turn our backs on renewable technologies. One of my critics in the Daily Telegraph, my alma mater, the Daily Telegraph, actually is a former advisor of mine as it happens, he scoffed at wind power on the grounds that it was medieval technology. Well, medieval, he said. Well, I point out that burning oil is positively Paleolithic. And I believe that the critics of this agenda, of what we're trying to do, massively underestimate the ability of the human race to harness the natural world, to come up with innovative zero-carbon solutions.
Okay, well, some of the critics he's talking about were also within his own party and even within his own government. Now, I want to say thanks to Adam Berenkopf for sharing these clips, these images from different articles. It says here, Boris Johnson turns his back on green agenda with rewilding rethink. This is from June the 12th this year. Then we have this. Johnson hints at new coal mine for Cumbria will get go-ahead. That's again in June. Boris Johnson blows cold on onshore wind faced with 100 plus rebel MPs. Again this year. And finally, Boris Johnson's new push for oil and gas will blow net zero commitment, analysis shows. So Boris Johnson is good at rhetoric. Boris Johnson is not good on trust. This is somebody who has lied for his entire career. And now look, as I said at the beginning of this clip, I agree with what he's saying here. The problem is that Boris Johnson is not to be trusted. Boris Johnson has lied about pretty much everything he has said. So is Boris Johnson telling the truth here? Does he actually believe what he's saying? As I said, there are people within his party and people he appointed to government who don't believe in climate change, who don't believe in net zero, who don't believe that that it's necessary to take action. He put those people in those positions. He has to take responsibility for that. Now, I think if Boris Johnson was not a liar and not a charlatan, he could actually be an asset because he's good at speaking. He's good at convincing people to do something. I think he would actually be he'd be an asset if he actually believes this and he was actually honest. But he's not. And I don't know whether he believes this or not, because he constantly changes his position. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.